Hey folks, it's your girl Lexi Mahari, and I am back with another episode of Buzzworthy Chit Chat, where I like to share my opinion on the latest pop culture news, current events, provide a few reality television reviews and scripted television reviews, and so much more. But before we dive in, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified each time I upload a brand new video. So, yes, folks, I am back. I know it's been a while since I shared my thoughts about much of anything, but I just could not stay on the sidelines and allow the Real Housewives of Atlanta season 14 to bypass without me giving just a few kernels of my opinion to the general public. So, I am back diving into episode 11 to talk with you a little bit about cabin fever. So, listen, folks, you know me. I'm not going to dissect every moment of the episode, but I am going to share with you my top three moments. I do want to start by starting with or beginning with a bonus moment, and that is, of course, we begin this episode with Marlo reiterating to the ladies that she does not feel that Kenya should be allowed to participate in their activities if she is not going to stay in the house. Now, I have a few thoughts about that. On one hand, of course, none of us like it when our coworkers aren't forced to give 100% of themselves as we are having to give. However, in this situation, if we are putting the reality in reality television, you have to ask yourself, how many of us would actually stay in a house with someone that we know just might trigger us to not be our best selves, whether that is verbally or physically? And the fact that we may have our 4 year old along for the trip. 3 or 4 years old. I don't know how old Brooklyn is, but let's just say for the sake of this, she's 4 years old. How many of us want to have our child witness us have a meltdown like that with other ladies? So, on some levels, I understood exactly why Kenya did not want to be in the house. If you've been watching this season, Marlo has not been a quiet new cast member. She was never a quiet friend of the show. She is very adversarial and definitely great at provoking the worst side of Kenya. So there was that. So with that in mind, as I said, we opened the show with Marlo trying to tell the ladies exactly how they are going to move in this space. And I think it's funny. I think my biggest problem with that situation was that we had some legacy cast members who were actually they appeared to go along with Marlo's declaration. At the end of the day, to me, Marlo is not the producer of the show. While she may have been paying for the trip, I don't know if that's true or not, but she may have been paying for the trip. She's not the producer of the show. So for me, Kenya could have showed up wherever she wanted to show up. As she said, she had the itinerary. Her primary goal is to just participate in the show and the activities itself. So that was kind of our bonus. That's the table setter of what this episode was about. So we continued with the girls' trip. Remember, the purpose of this trip was to rally around Marlo, who had put her nephews out for 30 days. So that brings me to my number three moment of the episode, and that being Kenya Moore opening up to Sonia to share with her why she felt so strongly that Marlo had done the wrong thing in putting her nephews out of the house. And I believe it's pretty much what I think much of the word I've been hearing on the street is, and that is the risk of creating abandonment issues for those children, creating some mental health issues for them as well. That, yet again, you have someone who is unable or unwilling to be there for them. Now, Kenya shared her experience in, going to stay with her mother's family for a period of time and having them put her out of the house and how that made her feel. And so I felt like she was, in fact, one of the most qualified people to talk about how that felt as someone who had dealt with it firsthand. Of course, Candy had previously shared her thoughts on it as someone who had raised one of her family members during a difficult time. So, yeah, I thought it was great that we had this side of Kenya. We don't always get Kenya being vulnerable or sharing her personal experience. I think some of that being because, it tends to get thrown back at her, particularly from people like Marlo. So it was great to hear her share that part of her and to add a qualified response of why it was not good. This is not to say that the other ladies were not qualified and given their feedback. They are mothers. I am a mother. I totally agreed with where they were coming from. There are definitely days where you do want to run away for 30 days, but you can't. You are the parent or the parental figure in your child's life, and so you have to find a way to cope with that. So personally, I felt like it would have been great if, yeah, Marlo definitely probably needed a few days away from the boys, but I don't know about 30 is a bit much. And her sister has 4 other kids in the house, so the idea of her taking a 30-day break to step away from the kids was a bit much. Now, playing devil's advocate here, because I tried to be objective about this where Marlo was concerned. I think we, as the public, probably should appreciate the fact that she did take a break away from those kids because, unfortunately, not everyone has good coping mechanisms, and we definitely don't want them to be in a situation where it may trigger an abusive side of them, right? Where she could harm them, and maybe she felt herself coming close to that. So I thought, if I stepped outside and looked at it objectively, good for Marlo that she kind of knows her limits and she did what she needed to do to maybe put them out of harm's way. I also like to think about something Iyanla Vanzant said on one of her episodes of Iyanla Fix My Life. And I can't remember who the guests were, but she talked about how a mother who had been abusive to her child, or maybe, and I'm not saying physically abusive, but just maybe not the best parental figure, only could give of themselves what they had been taught to give by their mother. And so it's not giving them excuses, but recognizing that sometimes people are not equipped to be any better than what they received. And so sometimes you have to give them not necessarily leeway, but you have to recognize that they may not, they just may not have it in them to be any better than what they are. So I think it's fair that we had Marlo make that decision and take a small break. The next moment that I want to call out was Sanya taking the information back to Marlo, because that seemed to trigger a lot of other events on the back end, right? So we have Sanya who's listening ever attentively, but at the same time, I felt like kind of disregarding Kenya's opinions about why she needed to do what she was doing. And she takes the information back to Marlo. Now, I don't know if it's editing or my memory. I can't fully recall that she shared with Marlo why Kenya felt the way she did about it. And I don't know that Marlo would have heard her even if she did share that, right? But what I can say is Sanya set some things into motion. It's a little frustrating. On one hand, I get why they do it. They have to carry the information back because, they know that their coworker is going to see them or see that interaction and wonder why they didn't tell them what was going on, right? So on one hand, I guess it's okay that she took it back. I just still didn't like it that she carried the information back to her. Now, Sheree called her a bone collector, but I don't even want to give her that kind of credit of being a bone collector. I think she was just moving rather shadily and hypocritically on some levels, because I think Kenya later challenged her, or earlier before that exchange with Marlo, challenged her to say it was kind of the same thing. Her feelings about Marlo were the same as Sanya's about Drew and their interaction, right? And so I felt like there's just a lot of hypocrisy happening in this episode and in that house. Whether it was Candy's commentary, and I love Candy, but whether it was Candy's commentary about Kenya's reaction, or Sanya carrying things back to Marlo and just setting off a whole chain of unnecessary events, right? Because then we have Marlo so upset that she just wants Kenya to go home after that exchange, and her feeling that, Kenya needs to keep her name and or the name of her boys out of her mouth, right? And so she wants to talk to Kenya lady to lady, and so she proceeds to chase Kenya throughout the house. Now, I know some people may have strong opinions that Marlo and Kenya should have just had a conversation, but I think honestly, Kenya is right on so many levels that that was not a conversation that needed to happen because it was not going to be a productive conversation. The conversations with Marlo are rarely ever productive because she rarely acknowledges her role in things that happen between her and the ladies or don't happen between her and the ladies. That's just the way it is. So, if I haven't said so already, I have to say Kenya's evolution and growth on some levels is amazing. So, we kind of have Marlo chasing Kenya through the house and Kenya not really being here for that conversation that she wanted to have with her one to one. The other thing I want to say about that is I think Kenya read that, any conversation that they had was likely going to lead to some type of altercation. Again, whether a verbal assault or a physical exchange between the two. So again, kudos to Kenya for just saying, nope, 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 not going to happen. Now, I needed Candy to stay out of this semi argument that was brewing between Marlo and Kenya. I felt like Kenya had the right to feel the way she felt, just as Candy felt about Portia a few years ago when she was being thrusted into interactions with her. Everybody moves differently as relates to how they handle their adversaries or people who they perceive only have ill intent towards them. So I felt like, I needed Candy to be quiet in this moment. Again, I am typically Team Candy, but I did not agree with her weighing in on, how Kenya was electing to move in this moment, when she said, well, she hasn't insulted you yet. She hasn't said anything yet. Kenya's point was, yeah, she hasn't, but she will. And I'm trying to avoid that situation. So for me, this was one of those moments where I was like, Candy, I need you to be quiet and let Kenya handle this the way she sees fit. So, unfortunately, this argument goes on apparently for upwards of 2 hours, according to Candy. If you saw Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen last night, she talked about the fact that that argument went on for almost 2 hours. And then you throw in Drew and Sheree's friend, it was just a mess of messes, right? Of arguments that took place for a couple of hours. So, of course, leading up to my number one moment of the night, Marlo decides that she's going to kick the ladies off the trip. She's bringing the trip to an end because she is not getting what she thinks she needs from them on the trip. And that is the support and people rallying around her. And, again, I have mixed feelings about it. On some levels, I understand what she's saying. Sometimes you want your support system to rally around you and tell you that it's going to be okay. I just don't know if these were going to be the girls to do that for her or the ladies to do that for her. They are not her besties, they are acquaintances on the show. And so now, Marlo said that the reason she was ending this trip was that it was not fun, that it was not uplifting, and that, she just wasn't getting what she needed to get from the trip. And she proceeded to also indicate that Kenya's arrival made it unfun. But I think sometimes, you get back what you give, right? You get back what you give in this world. And I don't know that Kenya is completely at fault for it. I think, unfortunately for Marlo, she made the trip about Kenya, and therefore it was not a good trip for her. I know people joke and say she's obsessed with Kenya. I think she is obsessed with trying to maintain some type of relationship with her. But again, if you're giving off bad vibes or you're saying things about your supposed friends that is, you know, um, perhaps not in the best spirit, it's going to be difficult for you to A, retain them as your friends, and then B, to not feel a way when they don't somehow reciprocate back some type of appreciation for who you are as a person. And so I think Marlo was honestly expecting too much from this group in general, but particularly Kenya, whom she has been insulting for years, right? So, yep, she terminated the trip. She kicked everybody out, and, interesting reactions from everyone. I don't think they should have been surprised, but okay, they were surprised. So, hey, chime down below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions about the episode if you watched it, and I will catch you in the next video.